Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Maxine V and I'm an artist and designer from Toronto. Today I'm going to show you guys a tour of all the mermaids I've done during Mermay, and I'm so excited to talk about this since this is the first time I've ever completed a monthly challenge and I absolutely love the experience. So I'm just going to talk about my process, highlight some of my favorites, talk about some of my inspiration, and some tips that helped me get through the challenge. Alright, so before we get started, I get a lot of questions about prompt lists and if I were following any, and the answer is no. I actually didn't follow any prompt lists this year, mainly because I didn't have a clear plan of what I actually wanted to do at first, so I would just jot down notes whenever I get an inspiration. As you can see, I actually create many copies of my files with just different iterations, since I like to compare the different color schemes, looks, and poses and go from there. The first two were primarily focused on simple motifs and design. Day one took me 8 hours, and I know it's super long, but because I had a lot of time beforehand, I spent some time on it. And honestly, this is the most impractical way of completing a challenge since I was focused way too much on the rendering and making it look polished and clean and not really thinking about what's ahead. So I decided to try a different approach in the next following days. And so for the first week of Mermay, I was trying out a sketchier style, so merging the layers together so you can actually see the sketch lines. In day 3 and 4, this one was a lot of fun to do since I wanted to create this concept for this eel and parrot hybrid pet for the pirate mermaid, and I thought this was so much fun. I had a lot of fun playing with the lighting and their expressions, so I just really wanted to have a fun and happy image. And for the black and white swan mermaids, it actually counted 2 days since I did the white swan on day 5 and black swan on day 6, since a lot of people requested to see the black swan version. They're both rendered a little differently since I had more time to polish them on day 6, so I added lots of pretty embellishments to mirror the ballerinas' outfits. And as for the seashell, I was inspired by a ballerina's headpiece, and for feathers, I made it look like it was shaped like scales, so it blended seamlessly. So moving on to day 7, this was a lot of fun because I decided to create a jellyfish inspired mermaid, and I saw these beautiful Mexican dresses I saw on Pinterest, and I just thought I had to incorporate that into the design, and it just looks like the skirt and the part of the jellyfish really looks very similar to each other, so I wanted to sort of marry those two designs together. So yeah, this is what it turned out, and I loved how it looked so much because this was just so much fun. And now moving on to day 8, this is probably one of my favorite mermaids I've done for the challenge, since this is the moment when I was painting it. It felt liberating since I just let go of the restrictions of making things look perfect. I went along with the flow of the brush strokes, exaggerated the scales, and really wanted to emulate Van Gogh's style. He's one of my inspirations when I was first learning about art and art history, so this piece is really special to me. And honestly, this new method of working started to carry over for the next following mermaids, and I would even say to the rest of the month. So for day 9, I wanted to continue using the same painting method of using flat coloring and simplifying the shapes. And for this one in particular, I was inspired by cereal brand Mascots. This one was Toucan Sam, so I was really referencing the colors. And then later on I added a tigerfish to reference Tony the Tiger. The second week was so much fun to do since I was just super excited to work in this method. And this time I was more interested in the idea of and the mood of the mermaid and really wanted to push it as creatively as I can. I started to fill my Pinterest board with lots of unusual objects, nature, and things that could help me spark some inspiration. This Cuckoo Clock mermaid is super fun to do. It also landed on Mother's Day, so I was also very inspired by Mother Nature and really want to sort of blend those two themes together. I really took my time with this piece, especially when I was conceptualizing the ideas and how to incorporate the Cuckoo Clock elements into the design of the mermaid. I want to include the whimsy side by adding a fence around her waist and some flags, and the overall shape of her tail by adding some pine cone elements, and of course adding the clock itself. The reason why I create so many copies of the piece because sometimes I think the idea might not work, so I quickly do some quick iterations to the colors and the concept. So I actually also explored opting to doing a matcha mermaid instead, but I really wanted to push the Cuckoo Clock idea, and I'm really glad I did because I really love how it turned out. So moving on to day 11, which is the manta ray mermaid, I've actually made some changes to the piece. The blues were looking great, but I wanted to complement it even more by adding a vibrant color, which is the magentas, so this is the result. So day 12, the resting mermaid, is also one of my absolute favorites since this is when I started to delve into merging nature and mermaid together, which is very apparent in my later themes. So yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. I just really love how all the nature elements are sort of blending into one another. This was also when I started to feel more confident with the themes I was working with and the ideas. Day 13 was also a lot of fun since this is the first time I want to incorporate storytelling into the mermaid as well. I was very much inspired by Wes Anderson's production design and colors, as well as looking at tropical wallpapers, so I wanted to incorporate that and build a story around it. So this is just something I really want to do, like more tell a story with this mermaid instead of just trying to find a theme. So as I said before, I go back to using the nature motif a lot. So for the designs like Black Sand Beach and the iceberg mermaid, I wanted to find poses that mirror the nature elements. So the triangular shape of an iceberg displayed in the mermaid, and the S-curve of the Black Sand Beach mermaid is also inspired by the actual beach itself. The beach is really gorgeous, by the way. I really want to go back to Iceland since the landscapes are honestly breathtaking, and I often refer to it as landscapes whenever I need inspiration. Alright, so talking about shapes, I continue to push angular shapes as well, especially with the medieval Seahorse mermaid. I was inspired by J.C. Leon-Decker and medieval books and its borders and all the ornate details. I wanted to stick to a more muted palette to create that old vintage look. So this was also quite a challenge to do since I'm not used to pushing such angular shapes, but I definitely want to continue doing it. So I also take a lot of inspiration from different types of clothing and fashion, which can be seen with the embroidery mermaid. So this is inspired by intricate lace details, as well as looking at different fashion designers. And I also carry this theme with Day 25 mermaid. This mermaid is wearing a lehenga, which is a traditional Indian dress. And let's just talk a little about this since I love painting this one. I attended my close friend's sister's wedding and was floored by the beautiful dresses. I really want to do a piece inspired by that and create like an ethereal and magical character, since I think Indian dresses are just so extremely elegant. So by mid-May, which is around like day 15, I started to get a hang of how I'd approach things and how to set schedule to when I'd paint. As I said before, in the first two mermaids, it took me around 8 hours to paint characters, but eventually I was able to cut the time in half by painting a maximum of 4 hours. I know it's still quite long, but I was extremely happy with the progress I was making and how I was improving my workflow. I think just the notion of just, sticking to your idea, going in your gut, and just not second guessing yourself would really help me speed up the process. I was also able to practice my lighting with the Candle Mermaid and Music by the Sea. As you can see, I was painting different lighting properties, so I wanted to paint how the translucent material of a candle will react to the fire, and for music and sea, I wanted to add a light from above to make it look like she's performing on a stage or in a concert. But by day 21, I started to experience burnouts. I had this idea in my head of this chandelier octopus lady, but it wasn't really translating well when I was painting it. I also think at this point I was just so tired. I was overthinking and overall felt discouraged. Even though I knew I had like this plan, I'm like, I already know how to do this, but for some reason it just wasn't falling into place. And that happens, right? Since it really wasn't how I imagined it, and by the time it was already past midnight, so I just started to freak out and think it was too late, which is quite silly, I know, but overall my sister convinced me to upload it since I've already finished it, and she said even if I didn't like it, she did, so it was just really nice to hear that support. For the next couple of days, I just wanted to do something a little more simple and sort of in my comfort zone, since basically like flowers and girls. Like the teacup design, which was fun and cute, and also the love letter. For the love letter, I was actually inspired by the film called Call Me By Your Name. Comment below if you've seen it. It's such an incredible movie. It's actually one of my favorite movies I've seen this year. So even though drawing flowers and particularly side profiles are my comfort zone, I still want to convey a mood of longing and love by drawing this vulnerable and delicate pose. So now that we're near the end, this is when my process really improved and I started to work even faster than before. This one in particular, which is inspired by paint. When you pour paint and ink into water and then it creates like this nice effect. This one took me 3 hours to do since I really utilized that smudge tool a lot and it worked out perfectly in my opinion. I thought it was such a great method a smudge tool to use this method for that, to achieve that effect. During the last week, I had the spark of inspiration again because I knew I was close to the end. So I've been writing notes and breaking down any last ideas I had. I think what helped me finish the challenge is to recycle certain motifs. So for this piece, which is based on Monet's garden, I wanted to use a nature motif and use a similar composition to the day 12 resting mermaid. Painting this piece brought me so much joy since his water lily painting is one of my favorite impressionist paintings, and I've never been to Monet's garden before, so imagining what his house and garden might have looked like was really fun to do. So moving on to day 26, I continued to paint more elaborate scenes. This one was inspired by Marrakesh. I was more focused on exterior and landscape and the theme of the mermaid. Now for the final days, I had a pretty set theme for the remaining mermaids. I knew I wanted to include some nature elements again because even though I was motivated to finish the challenge, I really still felt the burnouts. So I decided to stick to what I was getting more comfortable with. So that's the nature, and I won't really go too much into detail with these ones, but I continued using those elements like in the Volcano mermaid, where I would have the smoke become part of her hair, Aurora Borealis, which is she's the actual northern lights herself, and Milky Way, adding those galaxy elements. And finally, for the last mermaid, I combined the nature element, but I also wanted to make it look like a scene where she's resting and dreaming in the fields. This is basically a representation of me, since I really wanted to rest during the month of June and just take it easy with the art. So that's the end of my mermaid tour. I had so much fun thinking about the different themes and ideas. I learned so much from this challenge and I was able to improve my workflow and process, and I'm able to find a new style and method of working, which I will definitely carry on to my work and personal projects. I am just so proud of completing the whole month, so I really do encourage everyone to take part of a challenge at least once, because you'll never know what you're really capable of until you try it. Also, just a reminder, I'm opening my shop on July 19th, so check my social media for more updates. I'll be adding prints and stickers. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and see you guys soon. Bye!